The Moknathal Uprising. Heimol never recovered from the battles with the war songs and Kargath's slave uprising. The ogre's hold on Nagrand was broken forever. This turn of events greatly troubled the Bladespire and their leader, Imperator Kelgrog. Ogre influence was waning across Draenor. The Imperator was determined to retain control of Frostfire Ridge. Rather than simply shore up the Bladespire's defenses, Kelgrog sought to expand, and he had the perfect weapon to do so. Ever since the fall of the Gorian Empire, the ogre population had remained relatively low. To make up for their lack in numbers, Bladespire sorceresses had conducted cruel experiments to create new creatures whom they could use to fill their labor force. The most promising result came from the selective breeding between ogres and enslaved orcs. The children of these forced unions were called Moknathal. They possessed the strength of ogres and the intelligence of orcs. The Bladespire kept the Moknathal in chains, and they bred them together to create even more servants. To maintain loyalty from the half-breeds, the ogres threatened to kill entire families if even one of their members rebelled. Imperator Kelgrog unshackled many of the Moknathal and ordered them to make war on the orcs. They would form the bulk of the Bladespire's army. The Bladespire forces rampaged across Frostfire and seized large tracts of resource-high land from the orcs. Chieftain Garad called upon the region's two other clans, the Thunderlords and the Whiteclaws, to unite with the Frostwolves against this new threat. Due to Fenrir's influence, the Thunderlords rejected Garad's call for unity. They decided to deal with the Bladespire in their own way. Team of Thunderlord orcs raided ogre settlements in the dead of night, slaughtering young and old alike. Yet, the Whiteclaw clan did embrace Garad's request for help. They felt an affinity toward the Frostwolves, with whom they shared many customs and traditions. Garad was declared leader of the Frostwolf and Whiteclaw army. He named his sons Gunnar and Duratan as his lieutenants. With a formidable force now under his command, the chieftain struck at the Bladespire. The orcs didn't win any decisive victories, but they did capture a number of Moknathal and their elder, Lerox. When Garad met with Lerox, he was surprised by what he learned from his enemy. The Frostwolf chieftain had always assumed that the half-breeds served the ogres willingly. From Lerox, he learned of the Moknathal's cruel treatment at the Bladespire's hands, and the specter of execution that constantly hung over their families. After much discussion, Garad and his prisoner came to an agreement. They would help each other destroy the Bladespire forever. Lerox returned to Bladespire Hold and incited open rebellion among the Moknathal. The half-breeds rose up against the oppressors and set fire to the stronghold. As pillars of smoke billowed into the sky, Garad and his army smashed into Bladespire's Hold's outer defenses. The Battle of Bladespire dragged on for a full bloody day before the allied Orc and Moknathal armies drove the ogres from their fortress. In the heart of the burning stronghold, Lerox strangled Imperator Kelgrog with the chains that he had worn for so much of his life. The orcs had won, but at great cost. Hundreds of Frostwolves and Whiteclaws had died in battle, including Gunnar. He had sacrificed his life, helping many young Moknathal escape the besieged fortress. Gunnar's death broke his father's heart. Though Duratan remained to carry on the family line, the Frostwolf chieftain would never recover from losing his second son. After the battle, Chieftain Garad offered Lerox and his people land in Frostfire to make a new home. The elder Moknathal declined, knowing the orcs would never truly accept half-breeds. Lerox gathered his fellow Moknathal and settled in a remote corner of Gorgrond. Resources were scarce, but they would be able to live in peace. They disavowed fighting and swore to take up arms only to defend their meager lands from threats. Harbinger of the Legion, 10 years before the Dark Portal. From Tolgath's observations, Kil'jaeden learned much of the orcs. They were a resilient, proud, and mighty race. They were also superstitious creatures who engaged in ancestral worship and honored the world's elemental spirits. Kil'jaeden believed that these strong traditions would make the orcs easy to manipulate. If he could bend them to his will, he could use them to enact vengeance on the Draenei before incorporating the orcs into the Legion. Talgath was infuriated when he learned of Kil'jaeden's plans. The renegades were finally in his grasp. He had not endured millennia of hunting the Draenei just so the primitive orcs could spill their blood. He demanded that his master reconsidered. Kil'jaeden would have normally repaid such insubordination with death, but he understood Talgath's anger. Still, the Demon Lord would not allow such disobedience to go unpunished. He ordered Talgath to leave Draenor. Kil'jaeden's servant would play no part in the Draenei's downfall. With Talgath gone, Kil'jaeden focused on corrupting the orcs. He needed an agent from their race to follow his will, and he carefully searched for someone who he could sway to his side. Kil'jaeden found many suitable candidates, but none held as much potential as Gul'dan. He'd been born with physical weakness into a small clan at the edge of Gorgrond. The superstitious orcs saw Gul'dan's twisted form as an ill omen, and they eventually exiled him. Only the clan's elder shaman took pity on Gul'dan. He told him to seek out the throne of the element in Nagrand, where he might find his purpose in life from the native spirits. At first, Gul'dan rejected the shaman's advice. Years of being treated with disdain had made him bitter and vengeful, but after struggling to survive alone in the wilds, he sought out the throne of the elements. Gul'dan reached the holy site, a shadow of what he once was. A pitiful orc wasted away by hunger and pushed to the brink of death. He fell to his knees and cried out to the spirits, proclaiming he would serve them if it meant an end to his suffering. The elements answered, but not in the way Gul'dan had hoped for. The spirits sensed the darkness and fury in the orc's heart, and they rejected him, just as his clan had. Gul'dan's sorrow overwhelmed him. Everything in this world had abandoned him. He had nothing. He was nothing. Kil'jaeden reached out to his desperate prey and whispered in his mind. He promised to make Gul'dan so powerful that no one would ever pity or dominate him again. The orc would become like a god, and he would punish all who had wronged him. In exchange for this power, Gul'dan would help the Burning Legion use the orcs as a weapon to destroy the Draenei. Gul'dan agreed to this shadow pact. He had no love for his own people, only disdain. Their customs and tradition had caused his suffering. If attaining godhood meant manipulating the orc race, he would not hesitate to do so. Kil'jaeden instructed his new servant in the ways of the fell magic. The Demon Lord knew that these energies would physically change the orc, or even draw the Draenei's attention, so he took steps to hide Gul'dan's new abilities. Kil'jaeden taught the orc how to mask his powers, and he ordered him to use fell magic only when absolutely necessary. Gul'dan took to the volatile power faster than expected. He reveled in the destructive might at his fingertips. So was born the first orc warlock. The Blighting of Draenor. Kil'jaeden had an agent among the orcs to do his bidding, but the conditions were not yet right to turn them against the Draenei. He needed the entire orc race to be desperate and plagued by dark emotions, so much so that it would be easy to unite as a single force. From what Gul'dan told him of Draenor's past, Kil'jaeden learned of a time when the orcs had joined as one. Long ago, ogres had sought to dominate the throne of the elements. Their meddling had thrown the element spirits into turmoil, leading to hardship. Fearing calamity, the orcs had banded together to fight the ogres. If Kil'jaeden could recreate that elemental upheaval, perhaps the clans would repeat history. Kil'jaeden guided Gul'dan, helping the orc inundate the throne of the elements with fell magic. Just as planned, the corruptive power began to weaken the world's native spirits. Draenor's elemental furries, Gordog, Arboreus, Calandrios, and Incineratus materialized to stop Gul'dan. They had never faced a warlock before. The orc called on his strange magics to draw the life of the fairies, crippling their strength. He nearly destroyed them before they fled before his wrath. It was the first time in Gul'dan's life that he had dominated other living creatures. The victory was intoxicating. Gul'dan's fell magic threw the elements into disarray. As the seasons passed, long droughts were followed by heavy rain. Floods devastated arid regions in Gorgrond and parts of Nagrand. Freak snowstorms blanketed portions of Tanan jungle and Terika forest in ice. Rivers and streams dried up, which caused game like Clefthoof and Talbach to die by the thousands. Disease, water scarcity, and the loss of food sources led to immense suffering among the orcs. The shaman could offer no relief. The elemental spirits were tormented by fell magic, and they rarely communicated with the orcs anymore. Gul'dan also used his magic to spread the red pox among the clans. This outbreak was the worst in orcish history. Months passed, and hundreds perished from the virulent plague. Many of the victims contracted the pox during one of the orcs' Kosh-Harg festivals in Nagrand. Led by Chieftain Ner'zhul, the clans met to discuss the current elemental troubles. As the Kosh-Harg ended, and the orcs began their journey home, some displayed signs of the pox. The afflicted included Chieftain Garad of the Frostwolf clan. Ner'zhul feared that these orcs would spread the pox to new victims. He urged Garad and the other plague bearers to remain in Nagrand. They would construct a new village to house the afflicted and keep them away from greater orc society. Though the thought of not returning home filled Garad with great sorrow, he saw the wisdom in Ner'zhul's words. The last thing the Frostwolf chieftain wished for was to spread the pox to his family and the clan members. Garad remained in Nagrand, and he took charge over his fellow plague victims. Duratan volunteered to stay behind with his father, but Garad gave him other orders. The young Frostwolf was the sole remaining heir to the clan. Garad convinced Duratan to return home and to look after their people for the time being. It was the last time Duratan would ever see his father. In a matter of weeks, the red pox consumed Garad. Though he had led the other pox victims for only a short time, he had earned their eternal respect. They named their settlement Garadar in his honor.